Hi, it's me, Ingrid INFP, and I'm sorry for the setup. Um, Now that it's winter, well, it's autumn, but it's winter. Um, the light leaves us before I get home from work, so now I can't make videos when I'm home from work. Um, and I tried making a video during the day, um, because I happened to be off while I was working from home, actually. But I made a video that was over a half hour long. So, very fitting for this video, which is going to be about do INFPs have ADHD? Um, so my point was that no, I don't have ADHD, but I think ironically I kind of disproved my own point by making a video that was over a half hour long and just rambling. So yeah, make of that what you want. Let's see. So Dulles came out with a video that's about focus and the sensory world and how um, sensory overload and how the sensory world just like isn't really compatible with INFPs because INFPs are always thinking about 10,000 layers of things at the same time. So it's hard for INFPs to separate the stuff. Separate what is sensory, what is their own feelings, what is their thoughts. Everything is just a big cloud of stuff. And that's how I feel. Like I can't really sift the stuff through. It just blends. And I see that other people have a much easier time separating what is what and getting some clarity to their thoughts. While INFPs, we're just like making it up as we go along and having a hard time just navigating the world. It makes it really hard to act and to make to actually affect the outside world, because we are always so reactive and being affected by all the stuff that's going on. So these are kind of symptoms of ADHD. I will preface this by saying that I have taken the ADHD test as I'm a doctor. I've had to do all sorts of stuff while I was learning to give these scales to others. I have had to take the scale. I didn't do the long scale that is called IDA and EVA or whatever they're called. I did the ASRS test, which is just like the basic test to see if you have ADHD or autism, and I had neither of those. We could make a video about if INFPs have autism. That's a whole other question. And that's why my video was a half hour long, because I kept delving into all sorts of stuff. And I need to limit to something. So let's limit it to ADHD. And to do so, I took out the criteria, but the criteria is, you can go into all sorts of detail about the criteria of ADHD. First of all, ADHD is a disorder. That's why that's the D in ADHD, attention deficit hyperactive disorder. And autism is also counted as a disorder. It's called ASD, autism spectrum disorder. And personality types in MBTI are not considered disorders. But a neurodivergency is like being neurodivergent is basically having ADHD or autism. Certain people would consider having any kind of mental illness neurodivergency. Some people say it's just ADHD, autism, and maybe certain other things like Tourette's or that kind of thing. But in general, it's to describe those things. But wouldn't anybody agree that INFPs are kind of neurodivergent by the fact that their cognitive functions are like the opposite of what regular, like the most normal person is? But then if you make that argument, then you could say that any personality type is a disorder. And because why can't we all integrate all the cognitive functions? That's a whole other discussion on its own. But INFPs have traits. Their cognitive functions really lends itself towards ADHD symptoms. And thing is, since being an INFP is something that you're kind of born with, I mean, there are theories about that too, but you have it as a child too. Which you have as ADHD is also something that you have to have had before the age of 6. You have to have had symptoms like for a while. Let's see if we can find a good page. I took the CDC page, but I wanted to take the one that was for ADHD in adults. So this one's called qandadhd.com. I should have taken the CDC. Let's go get that. CDC ADHD symptoms and diagnosis. And you need to have symptoms, 6 or more symptoms of inattention, 5 or more for adolescents and adults. So 5 out of these criteria. And they have to have had them at least 6 months, which, if you've had it since childhood, then yes, it's going to be at least 6 months. And they have to be inappropriate for a developmental level, which is also debatable, So you have to, it says here, often fails to give close attention to details. It makes careless mistakes in schoolwork, at work, or with other activities. And yeah, I mean, we aren't sensors, so it's hard to pay attention to details. Making careless mistakes, maybe you found a way to kind of mask and not make those mistakes, but that doesn't exclude the fact you might have ADHD. A lot of people with ADHD that only have it as adults or have it diagnosed as adults have been masking their whole lives. So it's hard to say. Often has trouble holding attention on tasks or play activities. And yeah, INFPs get distracted. We have NE. Often does not seem to listen when spoken to directly. And yeah, we daydream a lot. I think that I try to listen, but, I get distracted. Often does not follow through on instructions and fails to finish schoolwork, chores, or duties in the workplace. E.g., loses focus, sidetracked. Yes. I think that I've done pretty well with finishing the schoolwork and doing the chores and stuff, but I am really prone to procrastination, so I could say yes to that. Often has trouble organizing tasks and activities. Yes. RTE is last. So yeah, organizing and such is hard. Often avoids, dislikes, or is reluctant to do tasks that require mental effort over a long period of time, such as schoolwork or homework. I could say yes and no to that. I mean, yes, I don't like having to do boring stuff for a long time. But I can do it. I think that I do have the mental capacity to do that. And that's what kind of saved me. So that's where I don't really relate to having ADHD. Often loses things necessary for tasks and activities. School materials, pencils, books, tools, wallets, keys, paperwork, eyeglasses, mobile telephones. I don't think that I have such a problem with that. I've met people who have way worse problems than that. But I have lost things quite often compared to like my SJ friends. They are they're much more organized, so they don't lose stuff as much. For me, it's usually because there's a mess around, so I lose the stuff. Is often easily distracted. Yeah, we've already said that. Is often forgetful in daily activities. Yeah. Hyperactivity or impulsivity. Now we're on the second part, the H in ADHD. 6 or more symptoms, or 5 or more symptoms if you're an adult. It's here I think that I'm less likely to relate to these because I was a pretty calm child and I'm usually not really hyperactive. But I can see how some INFPs might relate to this. Often fidgets with or taps hands or feet or squirms in seat. I do like fidgeting, but then I don't really tap because that annoys me, and I don't squirm because that also annoys me. I don't like witnessing other people doing that, so I don't do that. Often leave seat in situations when remaining seated is expected. No, I don't do that. I mean, people with ADHD do that. I do meet these people as patients sometimes. Often runs about or climbs in situations where it's not appropriate. That is for children. It says adolescents or adults may be limited to feeling restless. Okay, sorry, I sneezed. Yeah, feeling restless, I guess, is a thing. But I don't need to move really, so I'm okay. But I can see how INFPs are perceivers, so we're a mess in general. Often unable to play or take part in leisure activities quietly. Here I would say that being an introvert, I would do things quietly. What I was bad at was regulating my voice. Like sometimes I would talk really loud and sometimes I would talk really quietly as a kid. And my mom will sometimes say yeah, you're talking too loud, or you're, I can't hear you, So regulating that I think that it's just a regular problem people have. Is often on the go, acting as if driven by a motor. No. Often talks excessively. No, but if I'm with somebody I really like, then I will talk a lot. Have trouble shutting up. But if I'm around other people, then I will rarely talk. Often blurts out an answer before a question has been completed. Yeah, I am. I have trouble with interrupting, so yeah. I will listen. I will try to listen, but there's a part of me that wants to interrupt. Often has trouble waiting their turn. Yeah. I am patient, I think, so I don't really relate to being impatient, but sometimes I could get a little bit restless. If it's a stupid reason that I'm staying in line. But I think that that's for anybody. Often interrupts or intrudes on others. Oh, but okay, I already answered that. Yes, I interrupt and I hate that. I hate that I do that, but it's just I know what they're going to say, so I want to say it. And I think that that's something that NE is really good at, filling in the blanks. But yeah, sometimes we need to listen and stop and do one thing at a time so that we can have good conversations. So yeah, I relate to quite a lot of ADHD, at least the ADD part, not the ADHD. So I'm glad that now at this point I'm halfway through the half hour that I did in the last video but yeah, so I relate to quite a lot of ADHD criteria. And that doesn't mean that I have ADHD because when I actually did the test for it, I don't have it. I also know that, in order to get the diagnosis ADHD, other people need to confirm it can't just be your self-report, it also has to be other people. And I think that if I had ADHD, I was really good at hiding it in that case. Because I think that my mom knows I daydream a lot and stuff, but I think that my parents, I don't think my parents would say that I had ADHD. Because they saw, I think my mom might see the procrastination a little bit more, because she was more involved in like most of my schoolwork projects. I think that my dad would just say that I was lazy. He's an ISTJ, so of course. I don't think that they believe in the concept of ADHD. I don't know, really, since they're boomers, I don't think that they really believe in that kind of thing. It's hard knowing if you have the diagnosis if you're an adult, first of all, and second of all, if you're a girl, because the symptoms are so different. I've had to write a lot of referrals to psychiatric clinics as a doctor for ADHD, and it's really hard to do the diagnostic process. It takes a really long time, a lot of visits, a lot of tests. So I, at least here in Sweden, I don't know how it is anywhere else. I grew up in France. In France, when I was growing up, at least 20 years ago, almost 30 years ago, I was like, ADHD did not really exist. Like, in their minds, it did not exist. So I'm glad that there are more opportunities now for people with ADHD to get treatment and such, and to be accepted in society. But when I was growing up, it was basically like, if you had ADHD, you wouldn't get diagnosed. People would just say that you were lazy and that you weren't concentrating hard enough, you weren't applying yourself in school. So yeah, I'm glad that I did not have ADHD, because that would have made my life a little bit harder, quite a bit harder. But being an INFP is not easy either, and I think that there's a lot of overlap in how people with ADHD see and process information compared to INFPs. I do believe that neurodivergence is a thing. I think that certain people are neurotypical and have much less problems with figuring things out. But INFPs are more likely, I think, to have ADHD. Or at least maybe their type imitates some symptoms of ADHD. You could argue also about autism, but that's another thing, because we have a hard time with social cues. But I think that we are interested in like the human social element in general, so I think that we are less likely to be autistic than, for example, a T-type. But that doesn't say that we don't exist. It's almost like a comorbidity or something, except that INFP is not a disorder. So it's like comorbidities is when you have two different things and they're more likely to happen together. Like you have, if you have high blood pressure, you often have diabetes, or if you have diabetes, you often have obesity as well, And so these are things that kind of come together, even though maybe they don't. Disorders are kind of a weird thing because they don't have any. There isn't a test, there isn't an objective fact that these things exist. These are just this is just language that we use and categories that we make. And we made the DSM and such to explain certain things and to be able to treat these things. but it's different when it comes to ADHD and autism, is that maybe you don't want to treat it. Like autism is not treatable, and it would be bad to treat it because, well, all our attempts in the past have been terribly traumatic to people who had autism. So yeah, this is an interesting discussion to have. I don't think that I'm the right person to have this discussion with. But yeah, I wanted to say that, do INFPs have ADHD? Yes and no. I don't know. There is no answer to this, but I think that it's more likely than for some other types. So tell me what you guys think. Maybe you guys have ADHD, maybe you don't. Have a great day, everybody. Bye.